Every obesity guideline in the world starts with the same assumption, that the human body behaves like a calculator. Calories in, calories out, eat less, move more, and if weight doesn't come down, the conclusion is always the same. You didn't try hard enough. But here's the problem. If this model actually worked, obesity would be declining. Instead, it's accelerating across countries, cultures, and age groups. Not because people suddenly lost discipline, but because the model itself is wrong. The human body doesn't behave like a calculator. It behaves like a biological system. And when you apply a simple, linear model to a complex biological system, failure isn't surprising. It's guaranteed. Framing the real failure. Most people struggling with weight already know how to diet. They've counted calories. They've tracked steps. They've joined gyms. They've followed plans perfectly, at least for a while, and often, they lose weight at first, and then something predictable happens. Hunger increases. Energy drops. Weight loss slows, and eventually, the weight comes back. This pattern is so common that we treat it as a personal failure. But in every other field that deals with complex systems, engineering, aviation, medicine, repeating failure tells us something else entirely. It tells us the model is wrong. When the same intervention fails repeatedly across millions of people, the problem is not motivation. The problem is the assumptions behind the advice. Why the calorie model breaks down. A calorie is a unit of heat. It tells you how much energy is released when food is burned in a laboratory. But your body is not a laboratory furnace. It is a living system that responds to food with hormones, signals, and adaptations. 100 calories of sugar and 100 calories of fat may look identical on paper, but inside the body, they produce completely different responses, different insulin levels, different hunger signals, and different storage behavior. The calorie model assumes the body is passive, but biology is not passive. Biology adapts. When you reduce calories, the body doesn't just lose weight, it responds. Resting metabolism slows. Hunger hormones rise. Movement outside the gym unconsciously decreases. Not because something is broken, but because the body is doing exactly what it evolved to do. If calories alone controlled body fat, insulin wouldn't exist, leptin wouldn't exist, metabolic adaptation wouldn't exist. The fact that these systems exist tells us something important. Energy balance is regulated, not calculated. Exercise and the compensation problem. Now let's talk about exercise, because this part is often misunderstood. Exercise is excellent for health. It improves cardiovascular fitness, muscle strength, mental health, longevity, but exercise is a surprisingly poor tool for long-term fat loss. Not because exercise doesn't burn calories, but because the body compensates. When structured exercise increases, the body often responds by increasing appetite, reducing resting energy expenditure, conserving energy elsewhere. This isn't a flaw, it's a survival mechanism. From an evolutionary perspective, unnecessary energy loss is dangerous, so the body adapts. This is why people can exercise more and still struggle to lose fat, and why weight loss from exercise alone often plateaus quickly. Again, this is not failure. It is biology defending energy stores. The mistake is assuming you can override a regulated biological system with willpower. Introducing systems thinking. Here's a different way to think about this. In complex systems, outcomes are rarely controlled by a single input. They are controlled by feedback loops. signals that reinforce or resist change. Body weight is regulated the same way. Hormones like insulin and leptin act as control signals. They determine whether energy is stored or released. When those signals are chronically elevated or ignored, the system locks into a state that resists fat loss. Trying harder inside a locked system doesn't fix the problem. It increases stress inside the system. In other fields, we would never blame the operator for a system-level failure. But in obesity, we do it every day. What a regulated system actually is. In engineering and biology, a regulated system has three basic components. First, a variable that is being controlled. Second, signals that measure the state of that variable. And third, feedback mechanisms that push the system back toward a preferred range. Body temperature is a classic example. If temperature drops, the body generates heat. If it rises, the body dissipates heat. You don't consciously decide to shiver or sweat. The system regulates itself. Body fat works in a very similar way. Fat is not random storage. It is strategic energy reserve. And the body has evolved multiple overlapping systems to defend it. Which means weight is not something the body passively allows to change. It is something the body actively regulates. Insulin as the gatekeeper. To understand fat storage and fat loss, you need to understand insulin. Insulin is not a villain. It is not bad. Insulin is an essential hormone. Its job is to move energy into cells and decide where that energy goes. When insulin is elevated, energy is stored, fat is protected, fat release is blocked. When insulin is low, stored energy becomes accessible, fat can be released and used. This is not opinion. This is basic physiology. You cannot burn fat efficiently while insulin remains elevated. So the critical question becomes, what keeps insulin elevated chronically? And the answer is not total calories. It is frequency, timing, and hormonal response. Why eat less backfires biologically? When someone reduces calories, but continues to eat frequently, something predictable happens. Insulin is still being triggered repeatedly, but energy intake is lower. The body interprets this as energy scarcity, with ongoing demand, so it adapts. Metabolism slows. Hunger intensifies. Energy efficiency increases. This is not a mistake. It is a survival response. The body is saying, energy is scarce, but I'm still being asked to store it. So it protects fat even more aggressively. This is why people can eat very little and still struggle to lose fat. Not because they're cheating, but because the system is locked. Feedback loops, leptin, and set points. Another key hormone in this system is leptin. Leptin signals how much stored energy you have. In a healthy system, more fat equals more leptin, equals reduced hunger. Less fat equals less leptin, equals increased hunger. But in obesity, leptin resistance develops. The signal is there, but the brain stops responding to it. So hunger remains high, even with large fat stores. This creates what feels like a set point. Not because the body loves excess fat, but because it no longer trusts the signals. When people diet aggressively, leptin drops sharply. The brain interprets this as danger, and it responds by increasing hunger, decreasing metabolism, and increasing obsession with food. Again, this is not magic, but predictable biology. Aviation analogy. In aviation safety, accidents are never caused by one failure. They occur when multiple layers of protection fail simultaneously. You might have a technical issue, a procedural gap, a human factor, an environmental stressor. No single factor causes the accident. Obesity works the same way. Frequent eating, refined carbohydrates, chronic insulin elevation, sleep disruption, stress hormones, leptin resistance. Each alone may be manageable. Together, they lock the system. Blaming willpower in this context makes no sense. You wouldn't blame a pilot for a system-level design failure. Why timing matters, more than quantity. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood ideas in nutrition. The body does not experience food as a daily total. It experiences food as signals over time. Every eating event triggers a hormonal response. When eating is frequent, insulin rarely has time to return to baseline. Fat remains locked. When there are longer periods without food, insulin drops. Stored energy becomes accessible. This is why intermittent fasting works when calorie restriction fails. Not because it's extreme, but because it restores access to stored energy. This is biology, not discipline. Conclusion. If you've struggled with weight, this matters. It wasn't a lack of intelligence, it wasn't a lack of discipline, and it wasn't a character flaw. You were applying advice that ignored how the human body actually works. When a model is wrong, effort doesn't fix it, understanding does. And once you understand the system, the struggle changes. If this framework feels relieving, that's not accidental. Many people struggling with weight are highly disciplined in other areas of life. They succeed at careers. They succeed at problem-solving. They fail only here. That should have been a clue. The problem was never intelligence or effort. It was applying the wrong model to the wrong system. If you want this framework laid out step by step, with evidence, structure, and clarity, that's what my book, Hacking the Obesity Code, is about. Not meal plans, not motivation, but understanding the system. I also share deeper notes and updates for readers who want to go further. That link is below. Whether you read the book or not, the most important thing is this: stop fighting your biology. Fix the system, and let biology do the work.